be good to go for the dailies.
I hope you didn't just jinx yourself right there.
I hope I didn't either, but my mouse is moving nicely. Everything is picking up nicely here. It's just the menu screens, and actually I meant to try that today, but I'm going to have to do some test tries of that. I've been so busy since yesterday and the whole weekend with the GameReplays open season. I mean, actually, mostly yesterday, most of last night was actually just for development work because my studio, Unearthly Games, just announced under Gaia, so, the project we're working on.
Yeah.
And so that's been been a lot of stuff going on with that, because we kind of did like one of those announcements where we got a website up, and it's not the most detailed, flashy thing in the world. It's just kind of there to be there at the moment, and then we're iteratively adding to it. So, of course, you can imagine the amount of pressure that's there to just every single day you've got to do something huge to keep progressing all that. But nonetheless, though, just finished up the winner's interview with NemOK, and that's pretty huge because, as you guys can see by the replays I've got here, that's who we're focusing on today. So, blaqk, do you have anything to say about, I don't know, much of anything right now?
I'm excited to look at some of these games. It was a big surprise for me to see an IG player come through the tournament and win the championship, especially going through so many talented players that fielded matchups that are very disadvantageous to the Imperial Guard race. So I don't know what game you want to start with, but I'm particularly interested in the games versus Noav, because I know he's a spectacular Space Marine player. I know he plays Tech Marine, who, in my personal experience playing Imperial Guard, is a bit of a it's a tough matchup.
Watch your language, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. I'm a little bit more of an Inquisitor fan myself than Lord General. NemOK is a big Lord General fan, and goes ahead and uses him all the time. But certainly I've tried that, as well, and it is a brutal matchup. And yeah, NemOK basically, to get through the brackets, to even just get to the finals alone, went through 2 GameReplays.org experts, because Norni is now going to be an expert at that. Hopefully should have information going up on that either tonight or tomorrow. But he has been confirmed as an expert, so you guys can go ahead, take that to the bank. Norni is the newest GameReplays.org expert, so always nice to hear news on that. And he also went through Edja, an existing GameReplays.org expert, and Dullahan, senior strategy specialist. Worth noting, he actually decided not to mirror there and go play champion, so off racing and taking the victory nonetheless. Did drop a game in that series, but that was the only game he dropped the entire tournament. Otherwise, he plowed through, as mentioned here, Noave and also Lindonen in the finals. 3-0'd the finals, so yeah, let's go ahead and hop right into this first Noave game, Noave number 1, on Ashes of Typhon. So we'll stop at 5 seconds in.
Alright, loading up now. Yeah, and in the finals, Lindonen was trying to counterpick as Tech Marine, so
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how he fields this matchup. Talking to him after the tournament, it appears he actually made up the build he did in this game on the spot for to try and take Noava. So it'll be interesting. I'm paused at 5.
Alright, same here, so we can actually really quickly, by the way, just to let everyone know what happened to blaqk. It's not anything to do with blaqk not wanting to be here. It's quite simply because it's finals week for him, and he's got a final that started at 4:30 p.m., just the worst possible time. And so, unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it, but I believe he'll be back tomorrow. But for now, we have blaqk, who himself is quite awesome.
Yay. Alright.
But yeah, let's go ahead and stop Dawn of War 2 radio, because I'm prone to that, and probably even more prone to it without blaqk around. So there is a lot to talk about. We'll get to all of it in due time. Oh man, I'll talk about Justin TV later.
Okay.
But I see NemOK is in the chat, so awesome. In fact, NemOK, actually, if you have Skype, you can go ahead and add. No, I'm not going to give out my Skype on the interwebs, but I'll send you a message on Steam in a minute and let you know what my Skype is. You can go ahead and add me, and we may, if we got some time at the end, pull you on and maybe do a little bit of interview or something. This may well go beyond 7 p.m. if we wanted to. I think we got the time slot if we wanted to. So if you got the time, blaqk, up to you. I mean, I know you're busy, but
I do. I actually have like a break because it's my finals week as well. I've finished two gigantic term papers for today, so I've got like a nice little lull before the actual finals start. So I'd be happy to go longer.
Ah, awesome. So this could be a little bit longer than usual of a daily. We've got like 4 possible matches we can watch because they're all great matches. I mean, they're all matchups where, I mean, especially like Commando Knob, there's so many things, because Norni played Commando Knob in both of them from what I could see. And that is, we'll talk about it later, but certainly Tech Marine here. And now let's get this started in 5. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So in the top here we've got Noave, and in the bottom we've got Nemok. As mentioned, Noave is going ahead and using the Tech Marine, and in the bottom we've got Nemok with the Lord General. We can already see he's making a Guardsman squad as his second squad here, and Noave is pulling out a Tactical Space Marine squad. Noave, a pretty kind of typical cap order, actually going for that requisition with the scouts there, is a little bit different, but I like it because these tacs are going to be able to come out and get that natural requisition point here, but they're 1.5x cap speed. This is actually something we saw Lindona do on Greentooth Gorge too, for those of you guys who watched the finals yesterday for the Game Replays Open Season, which we did have on here. So.
And meanwhile, Nem is going for a capping order that emphasizes getting a quick rec point and VP to start the bleed on his opponent and get that rec point maturing. And we'll see why he's doing that in a little bit. But what it means is, in comparison to Noave's capping order, is that he's going to get a little bleed going on, but nothing too significant here.
We are actually seeing though that Noave is going for his non-natural victory point first. What he really seemed to be doing there was to go ahead and use the tax 1.5x cap speed to go ahead and capture his natural victory point and to try and get that like 2 victory points at once, get that very quick 2 victory point bleed. But we see the Sentinel and the Lord General immediately coming over and shutting that effort down. And by the way, there are 3 Guardsman squads on the field for Nemok. This is the big portion of this build. This is like a just hugely Guardsman-centric build. And a lot of players call Guardsmen trash, but Nemok is going to show us today that Guardsmen are anything but trash.
Indeed, indeed. They're just such a curious unit, because one-on-one they're not really going to take anything, but they're just so cheap to reinforce with the Sergeant upgrade and so cheap to build that he's actually able to play more of a map control-centric and basically overwhelm him with numbers game. And it's going to end up working very well. And I like what Nem is doing here, where he's at, one of the big problems in fighting a Space Marine player, at least from my perspective as an Imperial Guard player, is getting pressured on your side of the map. So he's using his advantage in rec-centric units before tier 1.5 would be able to come out to make a push on Noav's, or a timing push on Noav's natural power.
Timing push, that is a word that is just a phrase we do not hear nearly enough in Dawn of War 2, but huge props to anyone that pulls those off right now, especially with such a new race in the Imperial Guard. Nemok doing a great job of mastering this already, and look at this, he's right on top of Noave here. Noave is just doing whatever he can to try and stay alive, but here goes down a turret to go ahead and try and cement this push. And this is something that in the semifinals and finals that we casted, we observed this very thing going down with for Nemok, so this is not just an isolated incident here.
And what's important to note is that that turret would be hitting right about the time that a Devastator Heavy Bolter would be going on the field. I know Noab has actually pumped out the Mastercrafted Bolter in Artificer armor, as opposed to going for the Bolter. But what it means is that this push, even if Noab was going for a quick tier 1.5 unit to try and push Nem back, this aggression near the power would still be solidified, because you can actually use the turret to retreat behind to keep yourself out of range of the bolter. So it's a very, very good play.
Now I find this a little interesting. He's kind of focus firing the Tech Marine here, which seems a little odd when it has Artificer's armor on it. You see, even getting it down really low, he's able to get out. But now the second the Tech Marines force off, almost everything else is just going away at this point. The Tactical Marines are doing what they can to stay in the fight, but the Sentinels seem to be alright down there.
Mm-hmm. And despite Noab's kind of delaying action of capping the bottom left victory point, what's going on, he's absolutely pinned up against the wall right now. He's contained, he has no power. He's even forced to drop gens in the middle, which it's
a temporary maneuver.
Yeah, I would call it cheese, because as soon as Nem sees it, it's going to get called out and destroyed. he's actually in such a bad position that he needs to try and take such a big risk to get back in the game. So that really shows you the mentality that Noav has right now of just feeling absolutely slammed against the wall.
Now, this game is a little interesting because we are seeing something different from NemOK than, well, what I had seen in the finals and other places, is that we're seeing catechins. This is something that I hadn't seen him use in the other games in the GameReplays open season tournament.
Yeah, I don't like catechins as much in this situation because they're not a direct response to anything that Noav's doing. Because, well, he's already has such a huge advantage with just the Guardsmen. And there's not really, he's just not seeing anything that makes him want to get catechins, despite the fact that they're amazing units and are good to have on the field.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I guess we should probably mention again, just like reiterate, this is, from what Noav has told us, he basically made up this build, this game, to use against Noave, like he just on the fly, so it really wouldn't surprise me if the catechins are something that he used to use in other builds and whatnot before he went ahead and used this one. And now this is kind of the new thing, and he hasn't quite stripped that out of it yet at this point, this replay that we're watching.
And you'll see in later games that he refines it out, as we saw in the finals. But I think it's also important to note that Nem has managed to pump out 5 Tier 1 units compared to Noav's 3, and has still managed to retain a power income advantage.
Yeah.
So,
and look at all this requisition that Noav is having to spend on these power nodes. I mean, at this point, even if we consider Space Marine's improved economy in Tier 1, right? Like, Noav was at a point here where he could have gotten an Assault Space Marine or another Tactical Space Marine squad in terms of the amount of... Oh my gosh, this grenade on these catechins! Oh, wow! Whoa. That is brutal! But as I was saying, he was at a point where he could have gotten another TAC squad or an Assault Space Marine squad. And then all of a sudden, because he needs those generators, he knows he needs them long term, he has to get to Tier 2. All of a sudden, that requisition just evaporates to deal with the power game. Because he goes ahead and has to plop down another node and more generators in the middle because these just keep getting bashed. In fact, we're seeing that NemOK hasn't even bothered capturing this node. He's had chances. Yes, Noave's been sitting there and doing the little rebuild thing, right? Keep rebuilding the node and let it get destroyed. Just to kind of keep the node there, right? But at the same time, I think honestly that NemOK is quite happy to just deny his opponent requisition here.
And Noav can keep pumping out gens at this rate because he's got 3 mature rec points at this time, and he has a much higher rec income than Nem, but at the same time, he doesn't have the standing forces to be able to stand up to anything that Noav's doing. Nem is doing.
Exactly, and yeah, that also goes back towards the upkeep. I mean, his upkeep is much less than Nem's upkeep is.
Yeah. And I understand what Noav's was trying to do, because if you've never seen this kind of build before, and you see 3 Guardsmen running at you, of course you're going to want to check to Tier 2 for the devastating AoE present that SM has, whether that's in the form of a Librarian, a Plasma Devastator, or, I mean, personally my favorite is the AC Dread. But it's, I understand his response, but I think he underestimated the being overwhelmed by wave after wave of Imperial Guard bodies, basically.
Yeah, now, by the way, I do like this. Finally, Nem has basically gotten the power expenditure out of Noave that he needs, right, from this middle node. So he's got, the requisition expenditure, I should say. He's gotten Noave to expend a lot of requisition on that middle node, and now he's just going to decapping at this point. This is the point now that he chooses to go ahead and do that. And it just so happens to come. I have no idea if this timing is intentional or not, but we see a PDEV coming out, but there's no chance for Noave to go ahead and get a Librarian, even if he wants one right now, because the power has been cut at a key timing. The timing in which the power has been cut, specifically, is right after Noave started teching Tier 2. That's the most dangerous time for your power to be cut, because if you're doing a good job with your macro, right, you're not going to have, any power right after you tech Tier 2. So if you have no power income to follow that up, all of a sudden you made this huge power expenditure to get tech, and now you don't even have the resources you need to actually get tech. So you're kind of like stuck. It's like going tier 3 and not being able to get any tier 3 units. It's like, okay, why did you go tier 3?
Exactly. And I think one of the strongest compliments I can give Nevin as a player is that he's acutely aware of just these little windows where he's able to capitalize and cripple his opponent. I was going to make a StarCraft reference for being crippled on tech, but I think you did an excellent job of describing it there.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to pat myself on the back too much, but yeah, there certainly are quite a few StarCraft references that could be made. I think those players familiar with the game will be able to draw them themselves, and those who aren't, we may be doing them a disservice by trying to go and relate everything in Dawn of War 2 to StarCraft. But certainly, there is a huge macro component in Dawn of War 2. We iterate that so much on this show, and again, just Nem does a great job of really bringing that out. Meanwhile, we actually see missile tactical space marines. That's because this Chimera is out. Basically, this Chimera is out exactly when it needs to be.
Yeah, it came at a perfect time. But at the same time, Noav is still on the back foot. He has no generators. He's relying on trying to creep out of his own base under the cover of a plasma devastator. And he doesn't even have the standing forces to be able to really even protect them from literally catechins just walking up to the plasma devastator.
Well, those catechins did have a health pack, and that is the other thing that once the second that Noav, my bad.
Creeping Barrages base.
Yes, this is something that we saw. Well, again during the actual event, I saw a lot of that. He just does a great job of using this. I'm not gonna make a comment on how much I actually like it being used in base like that, but it's a tool available to him, and he's making great use of it. So, from that standpoint, I certainly can't complain at all.
Oh yeah, and it's one of the more devastating globals, I think, in the game.
I completely agree. My roommate started up Retribution with using Imperial Guard, specifically Lord General, and I know the first few times I had that used on me, it was just the most I couldn't believe it was the right cost that it is. Yeah, and yeah, I could go on and on about how powerful it is, but I don't think that's appropriate. And we see that just because he hasn't been able to get his power back up, Noav is forced to try and use rec-only units to break this contain that Nem is forcing down his throat, which leads to the double plasma devastator, which is really not ideal, even against the force composition of Nem, because it's so static and you can't really creep them effectively to be able to push into the to be able to secure his power and be able to get the things that he needs to get onto the field right now. Yeah, no,
so
it's definitely worth mentioning. He doesn't even have Orbs of the Omnissiah on his Tech Marine, and that, honestly, I mean, again, Tech Marine is my main Space Marine hero, right? So when I play Space Marines, other than recently when I've been playing Apothecary, I'll go Tech Marine. When I see a vehicle like a Chimera on the field, the first thing I want to do is get some kind of AV and Orbs of the Omnissiah, because I just love Orbs of the Omnissiah so much, right?
Oh yeah.
It's so awesome when you're able to get it off. It just, works really well. And so we're seeing the fact that he doesn't have that, and then we look at his power income and such, it's so low, his standing power is so low, he honestly just can't afford that. He's trying to get Librarian out because he's got 2 static units that he has to get in some way moving and mobile because there are Ogrins coming at him.
Yeah.
Not to mention this that's just popping up every chance that Nem gets. This Creeping Barrage.
Just absolutely devastating. And I like the attempt by Noav to go for a Librarian, because it would be able to give him a bit more mobility instead of just having to sit back on his heels trying to slug it out with Plasma Devastators. But at this point, with the VPs dipping sub 100 for him, it's too little too late to be able to pull this off.
His Catechins actually are doing pretty decently this game. It's just, again, maybe that Chimera would have been able to put a little bit more of put the pins on a little bit harder. But yeah, here comes that Librarian that we were talking about, definitely being underway. Just, by looking at what he wasn't getting, it seemed pretty obvious that he was saving up that 60 power, so here it comes. But again, not out yet. His victory points are at 70. And actually we see, again, like line of sight even is a big issue here for Noave. We're seeing just great usage of Nem by keeping his Guardsmen really separated against this target, and now we see the sniper rifle. This is another trademark weapon and trademark tactic that Nem was using throughout the tournament. He really made use of the sniper rifle and its ability in just kind of great ways, and let's see exactly how he uses it in this particular game.
For sure, for sure.
And here it goes. There's the buff that just went down for the range buff, that is to say.
Yeah, and it completely changes the terms of an engagement. It's such a spectacular weapon upgrade. It dramatically boosts the range of any weapon of squads within range. And you see that the Guardsmen, backed by the Chimera, are able to hit all the way across the screen back there.
Yeah, and that's just absolutely huge. It really neutralizes the Plasma Devastator and all kinds of other artillery suppression. The biggest issue is getting line of sight, which is what Nem was talking about. You guys will see this in the winter interview, which should be posted up by tomorrow on GameReplays.org. And that was why we're just starting the daily a little bit later than we usually would. The usual time is, of course, 5:30. But anyway, so I was talking to him about that. And I was asking him about his usage of the sniper rifle, because there's some talk that the sniper rifle actually does sniper damage now. So I was wondering if, and yeah, actually it says it in the detailed tooltips. By the way, just gonna put another thing out there for Caleris' detailed tooltip mod. Go to GameReplays.org, search for detailed tooltips, download that mod, just get it in your game. It is the single best thing you could do, because you can just kind of read the sniper rifle tooltip and see how much better it is than the one that Relic supplies. You can really get an idea of what it does. But anyway, sniper rifle itself is not regarded as the Lord General's best weapon, right? But that ability is just amazing. So I asked him about it a little bit, and he mentioned that getting line of sight was one of his big issues, and he's actually thinking about looking into infiltrated stormtroopers to go ahead and do just that for him. So he's still refining these builds, and I'm going to be really interested to see exactly what he does and how he does it for Game Replays Open Season 1D, and anything beyond that, anything between now and then, and anything basically.
Yeah, I mean, I've always kind of heard Nem being thrown around in the good player discussion, but the level of refinement that he's bringing into these builds, especially from the fact that he came up with this during the tournament, is absolutely astounding. Just being able to play with the little puzzle pieces within the race to create basically this jigsaw puzzle of a spectacular strategy.
And I mean, you could actively see the refinement of it throughout, especially now having seen this match now, because I was casting during the tournament, so I wasn't able to really go ahead and look at all the matches that I wanted to. But now having seen this, and then having seen the game and the finals against Lindenen, where Lindenen went Tech Marine, you can actually see just a huge evolution of this build even within that game alone. And in fact, there's even going to be elements that you'll see in the semifinals and such against other races where similar builds are used, and they're just kind of little differences and nuances that I think seem to be tied in maybe to some of this innovation here. So again, I think we may even extend this to tomorrow and go over some of the matches that were actually casted by IC Cup TV, and go ahead and maybe take a look at those in light of having taken a look at these, and maybe see what's different and really try to pick those apart a little bit more.
For sure. Okay, so do you want to load up the next game in this series now?
Yep.
And while we're doing that, what would you call the basic fundamental tenets of NEM's approach to this build? So I personally saw within the capping order, prioritizing requisition and VPs over power with your first two squads capping, and an overwhelming number of rec-based low-power units in Tier 1. Because despite bringing out the catechins, and he got the improvised explosive up, or is that what it's called?
It's called Demolition Man, but yeah, they're booby traps or improvised explosives are the actual thingies themselves.
Yeah, but so total that would be 60 power plus 10 power for the sergeant. So even then, that's still on the light side for spending power in Tier 1. So would you think there's any other basic things that if someone wanted to replicate a similar kind of build as an Imperial Guard player or as any other race, kind of like a Tier 1 Blitz style, what would they need to pull out from this kind of overall style?
Well, there is something very specific here that Nem does, and this is specific to Imperial Guard, I mean. And we're actually kind of seeing it right now as I just got up to 5 seconds in the next match. And you can already see, again, the first squad being built is a Guardsman. And remember, he still wants a Sentinel, though. A lot of players will build the Sentinel first. And that's not a bad thing, by the way. It all depends on what you want to do. You have to remember, though, when you build the Sentinel first, the Sentinel cannot capture a point. The Sentinel can decapture. Of course, we look at the mini-map at the start of this game, right, on Seawall Frontier, we see there are no captured points right now. So when you get the Sentinel very quickly in your build order, you can send it to harass, you can send it to do all sorts of things, but what you can't have it do is you can't have it capture points in your favor. So you kind of slow your beginning resource start in order to try and hamper your opponent's resource start. What we see NemOK doing here is he's getting the Guardsman first, and then he's going to get the Sentinel, and then he'll get his third Guardsman. The order in which all of that happens is really, really key, because getting getting 2 Guardsmen out first means that he's got a decent amount of capping power on the map to go ahead and get the requisition VPs that he needs, and yes, even power to a lesser degree. And then he goes and gets a Sentinel when he's got 2 Guardsmen, because he has a decent force on the field, and then he can use those 2 Guardsmen to go ahead and support the Sentinel as much as he needs to, and meanwhile harass his opponent to kind of set them up so that they can't get all the capping in that they want to, and so they're a little bit on the back foot. Set them up for that 3rd Guardsman squad to come out. Once that 3rd Guardsman squad hits, he's got basically the primary force that he wants in Tier 1. And that's when he's ready to go and move out. So you have that kind of start cap, then harass setup, then final piece of the puzzle, and moving in like that. There are also definitely some similarities with Orcs as far as 3x shooters in terms of how you get the 3x shooters, whether you prioritize power. For example, there is a way to go ahead and get all 3 shooters without getting, without paying for any power nodes, but prioritizing maybe power node capping, so that you can basically get like the 20 power for those big shooters rather passively. And then, again, there's just all sorts of ways to go ahead and do many of those. But definitely, in this particular case, you have a very specific build there, and that's why it works the way it does.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree. All right, I'm paused at 5.
Same here. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Commander here. Ready
So
and
we've
able.
got that Lord General on the right of NemOK, and we've got Noave's Tech Marine on the left. We're going to go ahead and take a look. Noave is actually sending his Tech Marine and his Scouts the same way. And I believe, actually, I've seen this from Noave before. It reminds me of some Space Marine player, and I'm assuming if Noave is doing it here, he's probably done it previously. He's sending his Scouts to the bottom area of the map and kind of securing both his regular power. And again, this goes back to Noave's method, right, of using these tacks and their superior capping speed to get that natural requisition with them where it's closer to them, make sure they don't have to run as far to go out and get it. So I very much so like what Noave is doing here. It's kind of reminiscent of what I do in 2v2 a lot of times, where I'll actually go ahead and send out my Scouts to a far point, and then kind of have my tacks come out with, while my Apothecary captures something, my tacks will come out, my Apothecary will go with the tacks and start attacking, and my Scouts will capture whatever the tacks would usually capture, because I don't like having my Apothecary alone. But different thing here, we see Nem basically executing his build the same way he has, and he's still getting first victory point capture too, by the way. Even on this map that is a little bit different as far as victory points go, there is no natural victory point on this map.
Yeah.
Let me see, the Sentinel and Lord General are able to force off the Tech Marine. That's going to open up this Tac Squad, which, by the way, he hasn't even used a Stomp yet. Now he's going to go ahead and use the Stomp on the Tactical Space Marines.
And we see right now that Noave is already adapted his build order. He's not going for a second Scout and is instead going for a Devastator Heavy Bolter.
Yeah,
and
he recognized that Consecrated was not helping him at all.
Mm-hmm. And like I pointed out last game, he could actually he built a power node instead.
Yeah.
But he actually could have pushed with a turret on the power generators during that window before the Devastator was even out. So there's a definite window there that Nem has been exploiting in these games.
I'd honestly be somewhat interested if we saw a 2x tac build from Noave, but
Yeah, I feel like because I actually use the same build that Nem does from time to time against Space Marines in 1v1. The one
As Lord Commissar, though, right?
yeah, as Commissar Lord. So of course there's a bit of a different style there, but at the same time, the proper response I've found to it is 2x tack, 1 Devastator Heavy Bolter, because there's a large window where you really can't stop that ball moving forward to your power generators, and he can basically cut the legs out from underneath you in late tier 1. And despite the fact that multiple Guardsmen squads have overwhelming amounts of firepower, 2x tags is going to be able to outshoot pretty much anything you can field in tier 1.
Yeah, very, very powerful, and also the durability they bring really makes those flashlights seem rather insignificant.
Yep, the flashlights and t-shirts.
T-shirts part is a little new.
Yeah. That's... I don't know where I put that, but I feel like it fits. Just want to point out right now that Nem has, despite the fact that he's kind of not really going for growth, but making an aggressive push on the power, he basically has the entire map under his control right now, and his resource acquisition is dramatically higher than Noam's at the moment.
Yeah, he just has, right now has just gotten his power up a little. This is my only complaint here, is he's a little late on getting that power up because he built up about 300 plus requisition before doing that. Usually you want to try and get your power up like long before that happens, right? If you're at 300 requisition, it means you could have gotten a generator up when you're at 100. It means you could have gotten 2 generators up when you're at 200. You didn't have to wait that long. But that's a very minor complaint here. And that's something that it's just fixed by doing this more and getting a better feel for it.
Exactly. I think it's also worth pointing out that even if this push would have done minimal damage to Noav's power farm with better placement of that Devastator Heavy Bolter and preventing that turret from going up, Nem, despite not dropping generators immediately, would not really be that far behind Noav's power income. And I know there's back in the day when Pega used to do his no power build starts as Space Marines, there was always the complaint that, oh, you're going to get out-teched, but that really doesn't end up being the case with builds like this.
Yeah, no. And we actually see him, and again, the power expenditures for Nave are actually rather significant. He's going around with Artificers, and he's got the Scout Space Marine Sergeant, and he's also, of course, got this Devastator. So it's kind of no secret where his power expenditures are coming from, but they are rather well reasoned. Artificers is just about necessary here to withstand these flashlights to in any capacity whatsoever. These mines are going to be a little more interesting now that come from Artificers, because these seem like they can do significant damage, and Catechins being the only real detector for Imperial Guard.
You'll also notice that the mines... did they remove the slow on Tech Marine mines? Because it appeared that Sentinel was kind of limping around there after that explosion.
They should slow still, to my knowledge. They have, as far as I've seen, but...
Yeah. You'll notice the adaptation made by Nem from the first game to this game. So this would be the second game that he is trying this build. And you can see that he has not spent a single shred of power in Tier 1. Not even... Oh, wait, no. As he was teching... Oh, wait, no. Never mind. The Guardsmen standing next to the Lord General I thought were a Sergeant for a second, because they looked the same. But that's not the case. So he hasn't spent any power in Tier 1, and what that allows him to do is push out this quick Chimera, which is before Noav can even start his Tier 2 tech. And
you've seen the Chimera is already about a third of the way done, and Noav is at about 95 power right now in Tier 1. Demo K is already at about 31 power, even after training the Chimera in Tier 2.
Yeah, it's just such a significant advantage. I won't say that the game's won at this point, but Noav has his work cut out for him to claw his way back into this game. And he even had to go for a second scout squad. Although that could be planned, I feel like that's almost a reactionary, like, I have way too much rec, I can't push things out, I need more map presence, kind of trying to adapt after the fact. So you can really see that Noav is hurting bad from this constant pressure of Nem.
Yeah, it was something where actually last game you saw that he got the Scout, Tac, Scout, and this game we saw he got Scout, again, starting Scout, but Scout, Tac, Devastator, and then Scout. And I don't, again, as you said, that's last Scout there, probably more to do with lack of power than anything else.
And not to go back, not to harp on Noava because he's a spectacular player, but that extra rep that has been sitting around could have easily been invested in a second tactical squad towards the beginning of the game to be able to withstand this kind of a blitz in Tier 1.
Yeah, which is what I was saying. I think you mentioned basically, but what would be the exact counter to this build that I would say as a Space Marine player is exactly what you said earlier, which would be Scout, Tac, Tac, Dev. All with minimal power until you cement your map control, then push back on the Imperial Guard players' power, and then you should be alright. But we're seeing here, this Chimera is immediately followed by Ogrins, and this is just almost the point of no return for Noave. He really has got to get stuff out to deal with these Ogrins here. Again, he doesn't have shotguns on the Scout Marines, though, because he doesn't really want that, right? For the Guardsmen blob, he just wants to kind of have them with bolters and be able to have some range against the Guardsmen and be able to leverage cover against them, because otherwise they're just going to get mowed down at open sight.
Yep. And he's going to have to try and rely on this Devastator Marine squad to hold off these Ogrins, which is really a poor proposition against Lord General.
And he can't even do that, though, because he's getting a last cannon on that Devastator squad.
Oh, he's just boxed into a corner.
Yeah, that's what this Chimera does, because now all of a sudden there's Ogrins and Chimeras out, and a Chimera out, and it's just, okay, what do you do? What is the bigger issue? And it's like, well, that Chimera is allowing 3x Guardsmen with now Plasma on them, which is just, oh my god, like Tax just, at this point, start melting.
Evaporate.
And it's like, well, that can't be allowed to happen, but then nor can the Ogrins just rampaging around be allowed to happen. Well, what do you do at this point? And it's like, ugh, very bad situation, but this is all created by Nem, and just some excellent Tier 1 play, and just a great force composition to really force the situation. So we are seeing the Librarian coming out here. Veil of Time is going to allow this Chimera to be pressured, but now here's the issue. The Ogrins can counter-pressure just as easily, Veil of Time or no Veil of Time.
Yeah, and I feel like although the Librarian is a spectacular unit, it really isn't what he's looking for in this circumstance. Because, yeah, you can Veil of Time.
And he's going to lose it! He's going to lose it! Oh my gosh! The timing on that! The timing is perfect! It's perfect! Wow. Oh my gosh! That is not an easy ability to time! Wow!
That is no Dark Flames click on retreat.
No, it's not. That takes real skill. Holy
wow! I would golf clap right now, but I don't. Well played.
I'll give him a Joker clap.
But yes, as I was saying, if he had maybe gone for a second Devastator in Tier 1 to be able to push around Nem's troops with Veil of Time, I could see the Librarian being a good choice. But as it is right now, okay, you smite one Guardsman squad, it may lose a few members, but then it gets reinforced for cheap with the Commissar and Sergeant upgrades and a Chimera on the field, and you just end up in a terrible circumstance.
So what would you prefer to see in Tier 2 for Noave here?
Honestly, assuming optimal Tier 1, which would be the 2x
Tax, yeah. I think
2x
we should make that assumption, by the way, just because really Noave has backed himself into an almost untenable position here. So I think we should assume that the Space Marine player would put themselves in a... again, we're not trying to diss Noave here, but just saying that the Space Marine player should put themselves in a better position. So if they do that, then what would you suggest?
I think, and this goes back to my ideas on AoE for Space Marines, but I think one of the goals in Tier 2 should be to try and pump out an Assault Cannon Dreadnought, because it's able to stand and fight versus this blob of Guardsman plasma that the Tacs aren't really going to be able to do the best with. And it also has a devastating area of effectability that stretches over a wider area than mere plasma cannon shots or a simple smite use. And looking at Nem, he's going to have a high upkeep due to all his squads on the field. So, assuming that he kept his scent alive, he'd be able to pump a missile launcher on that, which does minor damage, but won't be able to actually take out the dreadnought.
Yeah, it's going to force him to consider a last cannon.
And forcing them into that circumstance with such a high upkeep already, and heavy weapons teams having a huge upkeep in this game, is really kind of a minor win for Noav. And that would be how he would be able to come back into this game.
Actually, I don't think the heavy weapons squad has that high of an upkeep. I know that they actually went ahead at some point. I know like Ludas were like that for a bit, where they had very high upkeep and stuff. But I think they're regular upkeep per pop now, last I checked.
Interesting. I may have missed that patch change. I'm operating on...
At the same time, though, if you have to have, just having to have this, for example, last cannon Devastator on the field is already kind of less than optimal, really. It doesn't do a ton for you. And there we go. These Ogres are just being incredibly brutal. And there's GG. By the way, the other thing that I would have considered suggesting instead of the Librarian or a PDEV would have been Razorback, which seems kind of counterintuitive, but if you have those 2x attacks and that Devastator, I feel like the Razorback still gives you some mobility on that Devastator, and then it also gives you the infield reinforce and the attacks and scouts and everything, and it just kind of allows you to maintain your pushes a little bit better if you're not Apothecary. Even if you are Apothecary, it's still not bad.
Indeed, indeed. But one thing to note is that at this point, Nem has 3 plasma squads on the field. So trying to go toe for toe in a reinforcing battle with Tax is going to be a losing proposition.
Yeah, that's why the Razorback has that extra little firepower.
Yeah, pop some smoke.
That was my thought. Just being able to pop some smoke on your Tax squads when they need it, and then just kind of focus on with the actual Razorback attack, kind of tear through the Guardsmen that way. Being an Orc player, I can tell you just how devastating that bolter on the Razorback is. And it's not too bad against Ogrins either if you can kite them to the ends of the earth, but that's a little dangerous. The mines help a lot with that, though. And actually, that's the other thing, too, that I like about the Dreadnought choice. The AC Dread, or just kind of any vehicle choice, is that with the Tech Marine and Artificers and those mines, that is a big kind of vulnerability to the build that MOK has. There is really no detection on the field, so to speak. And that's something he just got to look at kind of, long term. He's got no way to prevent himself from walking into those mines and just getting blown up at any particular point in time. Those mines are kind of nice, particularly if you can position your AC Dread and those, the Ogrins are running after you. AC Dread, if a mine blows up like right on top of it, not going to do too much. Ogrins going to take a lot more damage. If you've got plasma attacks or anything else nearby, or just a plasma Tech Marine, going to be able to mow down some Ogrins very quickly. Off of
Plasma Tech Marine especially. And speaking from the perspective of a player who mained Tech Marine since vanilla beta, being able to properly position those mines and bait these melee squads like Ogrins into running into them is critical in negating them. So Noav slipped a little bit on his macro and keeping down mines at all times, because it's not like he was spending his Tech Marine energy on anything else.
Yeah.
And I think that's partially a consequence of being under so much pressure from Nem, which, again, kudos to Nem for coming up with a strategy that slams the Tech Marine up against the wall, basically.
Basically, the Tech Marine had to be in combat. If you've ever played Tech Marine and you tried doing it, it's about as effective as playing Eldar with Guardians and trying to put up a Guardian shield in the middle of combat, except Guardian shields are a little bit faster to go up and therefore a little more effective to go up in the middle of combat, if you can believe that. So the more you can keep a Tech Marine's back against the wall, the less mines are going to be in the field, and that basically was NemOK's counter to the mines in this game, is that, well, they're there, but there aren't very many of them there. And it's quite simply because the Tech Marine's got better things to do. Which, for the Tech Marine, he really hopes he should never have any better things to do than laying down mines. Because that is just one of the most useful things he can do.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Vultures and Brood War.
Yeah. To make a Day 9 reference, the counter to someone trying to do something cute, like placing mines or going quick mutas or something like that, sometimes is just to go kill him. And by putting so much pressure on
know of. There was no time for him to do the fancy positioning with the Devastator and the mines and the baiting and the luring, because he was literally, as you mentioned, in combat every second in that game.
Yeah, and so let's go ahead and take a look. We're actually going to take a step further back now and go over, and I believe this is the round of 16, is what that the Norni ones were.
I believe so, yes. It was the one before the ones versus Noav.
Yeah, Noav was round of 8, so I believe these are going to be round of 16. So these are going to be a little different. And as I recall, Norni played K-Nob, Commando Nob, aka. And I have a little story going into this that I want to tell, because there have been various requests for this or that on the daily and whatever else, but I was going to play ladder 1v1, and honestly, my 1v1 ladder is like, I'm like 5-0 as far as win-loss, but I just have not played a ton of ladder games because I just so often get 1v1, private custom requests and everything else. It's kind of like I already have my matchmaking set up for me, and so rarely do I actually go and get a chance to use the real matchmaking. But I was up like late one night and like no one was on. And I'm like, all right, I feel like playing 1v1, so I'm going to go play matchmaking. And I went ahead and booted it up and got in a match with this Lord General on Ash the Typhon. Now, the funny thing was I'd been playing Last Stand earlier in the night, and again, it was no one was on, so I'm just going to play with pubs. And this guy had actually been on my team. But anyway, so I get on, we'd actually beat Wave 20 too, so it was kind of like one of those good things. So you figure it would be a nice, friendly run-in, right? And, like, totally no. So around Ash the Typhon, I spawn in the bottom. He spawns in the top. I'm K-Nob, and he's Lord General, and I think he goes, like, 2 Guardsmen and Sentinel. Was about as far as he got. And basically, I get in the first battle with my K-Nob and get a successful stun bomb off on his Guardsmen that are supporting the Sentinel, and just basically use my forces rather well. And this is actually in the middle area, not the middle area on the right side, but the actual middle area by where the power node is, and just totally force him off, push him back to his gens, and he just sits in his base the rest of the game and starts complaining that it's impossible to beat Commando Nob as Lord General.
See, that's the attitude that isn't as productive in getting better at the game. I do understand some of his frustration, though. I don't know if it came up in your game, but especially versus Commando Nob and Mech Boy, it's incredibly difficult to keep Sentinels alive, much more so than versus other races.
Well, see, the interesting thing that I've found is that 2x Sentinel is actually pretty brutal against K-Nob and Mech. You've got to be careful about it, though. And this actually spawned, like, even worse, like, yo dog, you don't even know what you're doing at all from him, because, like, oh no, 2x Sentinel, when I have big shooters, why would... But then again, though, 3x Guardsman against Plate Champion, who in the world would do that? Nem did it. So, certainly there are very counterintuitive things for Imperial Guard that work, but anyway, the reason why I found that 2x Sentinel can work, it takes very good Sentinel micro, but... You've got to remember that for orcs, it takes 20 power per big shooter. So 2x big shooters against 2 sentinels is actually a pretty evenish battle. I mean, even though the 2x big shooters do a lot more damage, sentinels have a lot more health. I remember they're heavy infantry, so even though you see that 750 health versus like, what is it for shooters? It's about 120, like 600 health basically. It's actually way worse than that, and of course, you have shooter models and stuff die, so of course they don't lose their damage because of big shooters being on the last 2 models just about always. But nonetheless, though, only going 2x big shooters against 2x sentinels, it doesn't usually cut it, because it's a lot of firepower the sentinels can focus on each squad, and the range difference really, because sentinels don't use cover anyway, the range difference honestly ends up not meaning anything. And with no fire on the move for shooters, they do fire on the move, but the 50%, the standard 50%, that really has made a big difference too. If they were still 100% fire on the move, it probably would be totally in favor of big shooters. But because of that, that alone is kind of, So then what happens for the orc players, you have to consider going 3x big shootas if you want to combat that with primarily shootas, right? The issue with that now becomes you're not getting generators as quickly as you would otherwise. For 2x shootas, it's no problem at all getting generators up, right? It's just a very standard flow. You spend about 540 requisition on your starting shootas. But then you got to spend requisition on your generators. Now, when we start looking at 3x big shootas, that's another 270 requisition that usually would go towards generators, not going towards generators. And also, you've got to still have 75 requisition per big shooter. Also kind of a big figure as well, because you're going to have your first 20 power for your first big shooter before you're even going to get a power node if you're going to go 3 shootas really quickly. Problem with going 3 shootas really quickly is that vanilla shooters are horrible against sentinels. Horrible, horrible, horrible. They die with terrible attrition, and they just get stomped all over basically by the sentinels. So if you're able to use the 2x sentinels to push very, very early and to sustain that push, kind of do what NemOK did with 3x Guardsmen to non-orcs, right? Mm-hmm. You can make a very effective push there and kind of prevent the orc from even getting down or sustaining any generators, and it becomes incredibly brutal.
That's actually what I do in Imperial Guard versus orcs as Commissar Lord. And it works in basically every matchup except for Tyranids. So it's very, very important. Do you want to get the game started and we can
definitely
keep talking?
Yeah. So anyway, long story short, though, this guy was not too happy about that. So NemOK is going to show us now how to beat orcs, how to beat commando knobs specifically. So it can be done.
Yes.
And I'm just a bit loaded in, and almost at 5 seconds as well. So this game's going to be on Green 2 Jungle, by the way. This is one of the 3 starting maps for the open season. But anyway, so I'm at 5 seconds. You're at 5 seconds?
Yep.
All right, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And just a quick note, you were mentioning the 50% fire on the move for big shooters, or big shootas.
Yeah.
Because the commando knob doesn't have that, and combined with his ability to infiltrate, that's what makes him so good against sentinels, because usually you can kind of waltz on out as things are getting tough with a sentinel, even versus orcs.
It does require extra equipment, though. Otherwise, he just doesn't have enough health either way, from what I found. If you really want to stand up to 2x sentinels, it requires extra equipment. 1x sentinel, though, he's alright. But 2x is where he starts having problems without extra equipment. Extra equipment's another 20 power, and another 110 requisition is, again, the bigger issue. So if you can force the orc player down that road, again, you just got to beware of your sentinels. But it's one of those builds, takes a lot of micro. It's doable, though.
Yeah.
But so here we have NemOK going with 2 guardsmen and a sentinel so far. I'm assuming... Well, actually, I'm not going to assume anything about what he's going here. He's getting some generators down. Or he has a node down, at least, I should say.
Yeah. And looking at just a quick note on this map, it's a little bit different than most of the 1v1 ladder maps, in as much as there's a VP sitting very close between your bases, and the requisition is kind of located in this T-shaped formation, with 3 of the major points being very far away from base. So it kind of orients conflict very far away from your base area. So we see kind of this delicate dance of harassment and capping going on right now.
Speaking of which, I mean, that Shoota Squad, Manila Shoota Squad just stood there and was firing the whole time on that Sentinel. Lost 3 models. Sentinel goes down to 581 health. That's it. And they don't even have their big shoot upgrade yet. But you see, just to get that big shootout, and this is with Norni actually investing in power, took quite some time there. And again, one Sentinel just so dominant against a Manila Shoota Squad. That's where your opportunities open up early in the game when you go 2x Sentinel. But we see NemOK doing something a little different here. And here is the Commando Knob's nice little benefit that you were talking about, being able to chase this Sentinel around with infiltration.
Would you mind pausing real quick?
Sure.
I actually had a weird little technical snafu that ended up in me dropping the call for a little bit, and I tried to Steam you, and
okay.
What time are you at?
I am at, you should actually just Skype me, that's what I've got open.
I mean, like, what time are you at in the...
Oh, sure, yeah. Right now I'm at 2:28.
Okay, give me 1 second. All right, paused at 228.
All right. Anyway, if that happens in the future, just Skype me. That's the window that I've got open on my second screen.
Okay.
Steam is just all. I don't want any in-game notifications popping up.
Yep.
All right.
Will
So
do.
anyway, in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So anyway, we do have the commando doing the infiltration you were talking about here to go after this sentinel. Although eventually he gets a little too close with the fire on the move there, gets stumped. And this is when he gets forced off. That's just the other thing too, by the way. You can, especially with 2 sentinels, when you're facing a shoot-a-heavy composition, you can force off the K-Knob with a stomp if you need to. Stomp and Guardsman Fire will go ahead and allow you to go ahead and accomplish that. But we see here, Nemoke actually going for kind of like this delayed 2 sentinels. So he's not using it to harass early, which is a little, again, interesting and unusual to me because as an orc player, I much more fear the 2 sentinels early than I do later in the game. So this is maybe even more counterintuitive than, you know, what we're used to on the whole, because by this point we see 2x big shooters, we see the commando knob research and extra equipment, which is what I told, you know, what I mentioned, that from a commando knob standpoint, I want to have that in order to really go up against these the sentinels. But here we go, even just 1 big shooter squad here, nothing against a sentinel and any kind of backup.
Yeah. That interrelationship between guardsmen repairing sentinels and just that whole relationship really is advantageous for the Imperial Guard
Very
player.
nice building usage here, by the way, with this Lord General here. This is going to be really annoying for Norni because he can't do too much about this. Honestly, he's got to go ahead and get burners on his sluggas to be able to do anything about that, but there's no reason for the Orc to get burners on his sluggas in this matchup outside of clearing garrisons.
Yeah, this map is a double-edged sword for Orc because they have such trouble with these 2 centrally located buildings next to the power farms. Like, for most ladder games, I just stick a bolter in one of those and just push the Orc off the field with it. But it also has really close and easily accessible power farms, which allows for easy gen bashing for the Orc. So maybe Norni was taking a risk with that, and Nem's use of buildings is going to punish him in that regard.
Well, we see Norni does make good use of buildings himself. Last time I saw him playing on this map was when he was playing Mech Boy, so he was making really good use of the buildings there. We do see here, in the bottom corner, I felt like Nem got a little lazy. He kind of had his guardsman and his sentinel a little too close to the big shooters, so that the big shooters didn't have to move forward to keep targeting the guardsmen. That's something, if you can do that kind of micro, that is exactly what you want to keep doing, which is keep moving your sentinel back and your guardsman back with it while you're repairing it, to make sure that the big shooters have to keep moving forward in order to keep the guardsmen in range. Even though they've got like 3 extra range compared to your standard range squad, it's still typically not enough to get guardsmen that are properly positioned behind the sentinel. And the more they move up, the more the sentinel's just able to chew them up in that way as he kites back, because it's got 100% fire on the move. Shooter boys don't. So we see this is a little bit better position in the bottom now for the sentinel.
And I think just interpreting why he went for the second sentinel, if you take a quick look at the resource distribution of the map, Norni doesn't have a single mature rep point on the map at the moment.
Yeah.
So because of this second sentinel, he's been able to wage basically an
nice
economic war. Ooh,
That's
beautiful.
exactly what K-Knob needs to do.
At the same time,
but
though,
they're still able to
repairing.
repair while stunned, which is always frustrating. But it does give you a bit of an opportunity. Now look at this in the bottom, though. This is, I mean, again, this Sentinel is not winning this battle against 2x big shooters while being repaired, but it's not losing it either. We can see here that it's able to survive, and it's able to inflict losses on the Orc. And this is the power of the Sentinel against the Orc, which is that, no, big shooters don't lose a lot of DPS when they lose a model, but a shooter model does cost about 27 requisition to reinforce. Over time, that's a lot of requisition for Orcs to have to deal with.
Yeah. I don't like the way Nem has his Sentinel placed there, because if he tries to path backwards, it's going to get caught on the Guardsman.
Yeah, you do need to watch that. That is probably the #1 way your Sentinels die to big shooters. And again, it does come down to experience in terms of how to position your Sentinels and your Guardsmen. Interestingly here, we do have a War Truck coming out for Norni, and a Chimera coming out for Nem. I would really like to see... Ooh, are we seeing them? They must be coming out somewhere, because... Yes, Commandos! Yes, Norni! I love Commandos. They are just one of the best units in this matchup, hands down.
I have nightmares about them Commandos. They just,
They are, see, now those are actually, in my opinion, a much bigger issue for, and honestly, Tier 2 of K-Nob is just a nightmare, period, for any kind of Imperial Guard, because you've got Special Shooter on the Commando Nob himself, which, if he can get within range, again, against Guardsmen, it's actually not nearly as good, but against Catechins, that thing is devastating. And then, of course, you've got Commandos and their capability to go ahead, toss a burner bomb down and love the DACA, all sorts of things they can do, and Weird Boy is no slouch either, but just the two specific things that K-Nob himself can do are just brutal.
Oh yeah. And, yeah, exactly what you said. Perfect. How do you think this War Truck is going to work in this current force compositional matchup?
Unfortunately, it's one of those things where he needs it just because of the map. He's got to get map control at this point. If you look at the map control Norni has, he's basically been just keeping himself in the victory point game up to now, but he hasn't been able to do anything about resources because he's constantly tasking his big shooters on dealing with these Sentinels. These Sentinels are able to go around and undo any kind of tapping he's done. He's got to get something that can go ahead and sort of outdo that. But we're going to see he's actually going to go for the generators here, which is a little interesting.
Yeah, especially...
And this is going to be a bad move, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. With a missile sent on the field, you've got to be very, very, very careful with the... Oh, ouch. With the War Truck. Because it has the capability to chase you down and just snipe you, like happens here.
Exactly. And meanwhile, we're seeing the whole dynamics of Sluggas versus Guardsmen, which is to say that Guardsmen are horrible in melee and should never engage Sluggas unless you've got two Guardsmen, in which case you have enough bodies, particularly once you have the Commissar and Sergeant upgrade together, to go in there and actually absorb that, like those losses in melee, and you're probably not going to take as much economic damage as the Orc will.
Yeah, I will say,
the other squad
completely
will beat him up. Sorry,
independent of balance, I love the way Imperial Guard feels in that regard, where they literally can just throw bodies at you and absorb model losses like that.
I feel like they did a much better job of that in Dawn of War 2 than they did in Dawn of War 1.
Oh yes. So kudos to Relic on that one. I just feel like as a whole the Imperial Guard race is very, very well done and very, very well thought out. But yes, back to the game.
But anyway, so we saw that, again, I mentioned that I felt like that War Truck going for the power was a bad idea. It was a bad idea.
Yeah.
Norni tried to go ahead and take some of the power down that NemOK has. Instead, ended up losing his entire farm to what is effectively a much, much, much more mobile Imperial Guard force. Now here comes Special Shooter here. With all these upgrades, though, not going to do too much. It will force the squad off the field, but this squad was already really damaged. And I'm not sitting here trying to make a case for Special Shooters okay, Special Shooters not okay, whatever, this or that. All I'm trying to say is in the current gameplay for Imperial Guard, you honestly don't need to worry too much about getting high explosive shells plopped down on your Guardsmen. As long as you don't have your entire Guardsman army blobbed into one, so that like 3 squads take the same damage, right?
Yeah.
You're usually okay, because you're going to be able to reinforce that without taking too bad of an economic loss. The K-Nob is giving up his main weapon, which is much better against your Sentinels. In fact, it's even better at implementing passive damage to your Guardsman models, because he's able to, with his default double-barreled weapon, right, to just kind of sit there from cover and pick off Guardsman models and firefights and stuff. He just gives up a lot to go ahead and have high explosive shells, and he's trying to make it up in all one big blast. So as long as you watch your squads, make sure that he can't actually wipe anything, you should be good.
Yeah, and I actually don't feel like Special Shooter is very good versus fully upgraded Guardsmen. It just doesn't have the same return that you get on other kinds of squads. But that's just my personal opinion.
Oh, no, I agree. I basically try to not use it on Guardsmen. I try to go ahead and use it on Catechins, and luckily most Imperial Guard players will build Catechins, but it's very tough to use it on Catechins because they have detection. So closing the gap for that, and then not only do they have detection, but they have 2 abilities that allow them to keep my K-Nob as far away from them as they possibly can. But I do like the fact that I can kind of force them to use those abilities. So It is nice against catechins, but catechins have their own their own repertoire of ways to prevent it from devastating them. But they are basically a unit that can be almost entirely wiped by it, so you do have to watch out for that when you're using catechins. But otherwise, basically, if I get special shooter, it's because I want to keep Ogryns off my back, and I want to go and hunt catechins. I don't really care for it against Guardsmen.
And not to criticize Norni again, our newest Game Replays expert, but one thing that getting that special shooter did delay was his Weird Boy, which I feel is absolutely essential in the Orc versus IgM matchup.
Yeah, you want to talk about what's going to do more damage to Guardsmen? Zap!
Oh, yeah. Combine that with the commandos he already had on the field, and it would have been a devastating combo.
Yeah, because the awesome thing about that is the second that the Imperial Guard player puts 2 Guardsman squads together, for even just half a second, all of a sudden your commandos come out of infiltration, just love the DACA immediately. You don't even have to bother with the burner bomb anymore because they just love the DACA and a zap goes down. And now all of a sudden the Imperial Guard player, because who was it, Tank Hunter on the forums, we were discussing this the other day on Game Replays about various things that orcs have that are effective against IG, and the zap came up, and Tiva's mentioning, well, just bring in a sentinel and have make sure you isolate the squad, and the sentinel's the only thing there. The sentinel will take the second transfer zap and then run away with it because it's got the speed to do it, it's got the mobility, and the sentinel has the health to eat that zap. It's not good for the sentinel either way. It still does pretty good damage to it, but it does you can repair that pretty easily. It's not a big issue if the sentinel gets it away from the main Imperial Guard force. Problem is, when there are commandos loving the DACA, down on your Guardsmen, you can't do that. So all of a sudden, you've just got zap bouncing around everywhere, and it is one of the most brutal things known to man. And then you can talk about burner bombs and everything else on top of that, possibly, but just open up those kind of combinations are already huge.
Yeah, and I'm paused at 5 for the next game. But
I hadn't even gone ahead and...
Oh, no problem. I'm just going to do my Dawn of War 2 radio a little bit. But, so... What was I going to say? Oh, I was going to stress, since I mentioned I do a similar build with the Commissar Lord of double sent, then another Guardsman against Orcs. Especially in Tier 2, you're very, very reliant on keeping those Guardsmen on the field to keep your Sentinels on the field. So using the Weird Boy and Zap and the Commandos to remove the Guardsmen from the equation effectively neuters the Sentinel play, because you're not able to get repairs, you're not able to get capping down, and it's really a very much a House of Cards scenario, where if you can find a way to deal with that chim and take care of the Guardsmen, the Sentinels won't become dead weight for the Imperial Guard player.
And this is exactly why I like having a Luda personally as an orc, because you're able to use it in Tier 1, you're able to neutralize the Guardsmen a little bit better. It's not... Again, we're seeing, especially Nem seems to really have this down in terms of dealing with suppression squads, right? Like, he recognizes that the Sentinel itself can't be suppressed. It takes a lot of damage from suppression teams, but if you keep it near the edge, basically the Sentinel can still fire from about the maximum range of a setup squad. So if it stays in that edgy area, and you've just got Guardsmen repairing it, it actually is going to perform pretty well against the setup. So the Luda itself, against the Sentinel won't do inherently great, but it does, when you back it up with big shooters all of a sudden, now that's all of a sudden a different thing. You can kind of get a nice little position where the Sentinel can't come straight in and stomp. It's got to try and do something else, and you're able to do quite a few things with that in Tier 1 as far as a Luda goes. And if catechins come out, the catechins all of a sudden have to target the Luda. They can't target your shooters or anything else first that they would like to with All Reliable. And it just all around is a nice thing for orcs to go around and have that Luda, because then when Tier 2 rolls around, the Chimera comes out. Well, Beamy Luda is just one of the most brutal things to ever happen to a Chimera. It's actually one of those situations where a lot of orcs complain that the Beamy Luda doesn't have a snare, but it has higher damage. And in a lot of situations, I agree the snare is probably a little more useful, but the Chimera is probably one of the few times that I found where, just by its nature, the Beamy Luda tends to get that more. I don't know why, but I tend to just have a lot more success with Beamy Luda against that than I have with other things. Probably because the Guardsmen are always there to just constantly repair, so when you have that really high burst damage from out of nowhere, and the Chimera is not an incredibly fast transport either. It may just be some factor of those.
Yeah, as an Imperial Guards player, if you build tank bustas versus my Chimera, it's really not going to affect the way I play as much because you'll lightly damage me over time, and I'll just pull the Guardsmen I have inside that are manning the guns out to repair it in between forcing your tank bustas off and bleeding them dry.
Oh, yeah.
The Ludas really are the go-to AV against Imperial Guard.
They're the go-to AV against almost everything, unfortunately, but continue.
Yeah, that's a statement on the status of the tank buster right now, but we won't get into that.
My issue is I love tank busters too. I used to, in 1.9, I would just use tank busters all day. I would never use sticks. I would always use barrage. I would find ways to just use tank busters and make them really effective. But since the advent of the Weird Boy and a bunch of other things, even with the Weird Boy being able to offer Warpath to make them a little more effective at kiting, I just have not. I don't know. I mean, the Beamy Luda has just really stepped up and kind of filled a lot of roles in a much better way. Because, I mean, at this point, I'm down to, when a Blood Crusher comes out, I have one Beamy Luda on the field. I hide it incredibly well and just make sure it gets a lot of shots off on that Blood Crusher, and I'm able to put squads in front of it to prevent it from really getting to the Beamy Luda the way it needs to. So. And, to forget it to waste its charge on other things, because it's like, oh, look, I can go ahead and charge on this, and not realize that there's a Beamy Luda somewhere that it probably should be charging instead.
Yeah, that surprise factor is absolutely critical in this game. And to go back to reiterate one point you made about Tier 1, combining the double Big Shooter with the Luda is a nightmare for Imperial Guard.
Yeah.
Because even that neat little trick that Nem does, the skirting the edge of a suppression team, it's ineffective against if you have big shooters there to support.
Exactly.
And you're going to get walked back to your gens, you're going to get bashed, and you're going to lose unless you come up with something to stonewall the advance. So, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, with 2 Sentinels, you can still flank, but it makes it a lot tougher. And especially when I'm K-Nob and I've got that extra little firepower there that we talked about before. So I feel like, I would have liked to see Norni try that. Maybe he'll try that this time. So I believe, was it Norni? There have been Orc players that initially a lot of Luda experimentation was done on Greentooth Gorge. So there may be something to that. We may as well go ahead and get this booted up in 5.
Okay.
So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So in the bottom we've got Nemoke with his Lord General. In the top we've got Norni with his Commando Knob.
I'm just going to make a quick comment real quick on the chat. They're so manner, and I love it.
I agree. I love the manners I'm seeing here. Even Doave too. I saw many more players this tournament going ahead and saying GG, well played, instead of just GG. I mean, it's a little thing, right? But just the well played at the end, I felt. I don't know.
It sounds stupid when you vocalize it, but I have the same sentiment. Just seeing that within this community is awesome. And we've got Nem calling shoutouts to his mom, which is really cool. I talked with him some about that. She actually supports his gaming enterprises,
which
is
really awesome.
Really neat. Really neat. But yes, I know you and I have talked about the status of manner within this community and seeing it grow. Context of the GameReplays open season is more than I could have ever asked for.
Yeah. I like the stomp here preventing the K-Nob from getting in that building just a little bit longer. So we already see one reason here why perhaps Norni actually likes this map for this particular matchup, being able to use the K-Nob buildings a little more. But still, with these repairing... And of course, I had the camera away from it exactly when it happened, but these Guardsmen backed up into a spot where the K-Nob could not hit them, and the Sentinel would be repaired while still being in range to go ahead and deal with it. No cover modifier there, right? But all of a sudden now the Sentinel is more effective than anything else. Good job here with the... Ooh, the Sluggas are getting Burnas. That's the first upgrade. This could be something to deal with the anti-building.
Yeah, Nem was hugging that pillar-like building up between the red point and the power. So that was in direct response to that.
Yeah, honestly, usually I'll just try to go around that instead of expending the power on the Burnas instead of big shooters in this matchup. But we'll see how it works, because there are so many things that orcs can spend power on in Tier 1, and I know a lot of times it seems like orcs don't necessarily have the biggest of Tier 1 power expenditures unless they go Storm Boys, but all of that really adds up, considering that they don't have a lot of map mobility unless they have either A, a lot of squads, or B, get Tier 2, and once they get Tier 2, they go ahead and get... Oh, I like that! Did you see that with the K-Knob? Did you see what he just did?
So
oh
cute.
my gosh,
so
that
cute.
is...
So cute.
I give Norni huge props for that. That is why he's becoming a GameReplays expert.
Yeah.
Knowing that the Sentinel would eventually stomp him, he goes ahead, stuns himself and the Guardsmen in order to... And the Sentinel is going to go down! Wow,
Ooh,
oh my gosh. Norni is doing a great job here. He's going 3 shooters here. Now this actually, again, either this or the Luda are the 2 builds that I would look at to counter what Nem has been doing. You mentioned that you use the more pressure-oriented 2 Sentinel first build, whereas Nem uses the Sentinel, the 2 Guardsmen Sentinel, and then 3rd Sentinel, 2nd Sentinel, I mean. And this is why, in my opinion, yours maybe is a little more effective against the majority of orc builds. But certainly he metagames well against Norni. Norni doesn't tend to like, from what I've seen, going beyond 2x big shoot him unless he's forced to. So I think this game he's picked up on that. He's been forced to go ahead and do that. Maybe he doesn't like Ludas so much. But the 3 big shooters will work as long as he can use them at, you can get the big shooters out. So he's gotten the big shooters out by this point. He's got...
However, we don't see a 2nd Sentinel from Nem. We see a 3rd Guardsman squad.
Well, no, we did see. Remember, he lost.
Oh,
the Sentinel.
we did. You lost, but he's adapting with another Guardsman squad,
which I think is the perfect thing to do here, because as mentioned previously, those Guardsmen actually, especially in the later game, are going to go ahead. It's very much so like the Tax versus the Guardsmen, right? Those big shooters are going to do a lot more damage to them, and they're going to be pretty devastating. He's going to win the reinforcement, but here goes the Lord General is going to fall to these Burnos. He's not going to make it out of here, just from experience. If he makes what? No, yes. Okay, there we go.
And if you click, I don't know, I had my cursor on the Lord General, and it was just a little touch before a reinforcement arrived for the Lord General. So well done on Norni's part there.
Yeah. Well, actually, the Lord General can't reinforce on retreat.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah, so actually that is really interesting that his retinue doesn't work on retreat, but it does, I guess it is a good balance factor. But Norni lost a shooter somewhere in all this. Uh-oh, this is how...
Yeah,
this is
that offsets Nem's sloppy loss of the Sentinel. It was just sitting, fighting 2 Guardsmen and just died.
Norni. That is going to cost you the game, my good sir, because why is that going to cost him the game now?
Besides the fact that he has a force composition that's just going to be easily pushed off by what Nem's got on the field, it also completely unhinges what he was going for in terms of a battle strategy.
He doesn't even have 20 power right now. Now he does. He just got 20 power again. So he's going to get, if he even wanted to replace it, he actually basically had to choose between generators, which he's finally done on the another farm over here, or another squad. So number one, whenever you have to do that, that's big issue number 1, because when you're choosing between your power economy and your force composition, due to a loss, that's always bad. Number 2, if he had managed to get both, he would not have been able to get the power in there in time, and or he would have decimated it completely. So the fact that he probably would still have had a bit of an issue getting a big shoot on that, and we kind of talked earlier about how not having big shooters on these shooters really does make them incredibly ineffective in this matchup, because they just, unfortunately, this is one of those matchups where I can just tell you, vanilla shooters have their uses at times, and they're actually pretty good against Space Marines. They're not very good against Imperial Guard. And so it kind of recreated that situation that we were talking about earlier, where when you have that kind of early push that those dual Sentinels allow you to do against kind of an unupgraded orc force. So anything to kind of recreate those situations against, well, in Nem's favor, I should say. Even when he didn't initially start with those, it's going to be a big issue for Norni. But now we're seeing Norni is falling back to the same force composition yet. Previous game, now he's actually finally getting that Shooter Boy squad up and out. Although, whoa, wow, how in the world? He still has like 300 requisition. You know, I don't think he wanted to do this.
Yeah.
I think he had wanted to try and just get generators down and go tier 2 as quickly as he could. Then he realized that when he lost the generators in the top right again, he just couldn't do that, so he's kind of finally ceding to getting that third shooter squad out.
Yeah, and in Dawn of War 2 especially, having to react in such a way, although extremely necessary, really, really, really puts you far behind.
Yeah, because now he's got to react with his initial thing that he wanted to do, right, was get tier 2. He just wanted to get tier 2, wanted to get the power to do that. And then now he's going to go spend 20 more power on something that basically is still tier 1 oriented. Especially, again, this is a matchup for orcs where your strength is not tier 1. Your strength is tier 2.
Especially as Commando now, as you've been...
Exactly. I think Mech maybe has a little better in tier 1.
And props to Norni.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. You can play suppression-oriented play with the teleporter death gun and a Luda and 2 big Judah in tier 1 against Imperial Guard. That's incredible. I've had a lot of trouble dealing with.
Yeah, and banners even are also quite a help too. Because they kind of let you fall back and deal with the sentinels a little better as you get the nice little buffs from the banners. And you've got the range buff global too.
Yeah.
So,
and as you were mentioning earlier in the game, we've got the Commando Knob and the Sentinel doing that relational fighting with the Guardsmen top.
Yeah. And they're just kind of falling back here. They're out of range of the K-Knob.
Away, out of...
Exactly. And the K-Knob just sitting there and soaking up damage is all he's really doing at that point. And now he's out. It's a little aggressive here from Nem, but you see it works.
Yep.
And meanwhile, Nem forces off 2 big shooter squads by using his Lord General to force melee. This is an... Okay, go ahead.
This is an interesting quality of the Lord General because, as you've noticed, he has as our viewers have noticed, he has a retinue of 2 kind of squad members, which is wholly different from any other hero in the game, and they can actually reinforce on field. So, in essence, every time a squad member dies and comes back in, oh wow!
Oh my gosh!
What the...
Are you kidding me? This guy's a god.
What?
Number one, semi-half-hidden squad. Like, you could look even at their infiltration. They weren't... Not the entire squad was revealed. Just the burner models were revealed. So, that's already incredibly tough to target. And then just the timing on that his Lord General didn't... I mean, number one, even if his Lord General's hit, it was retreating. So it wouldn't matter. But his Lord General didn't even get hit. Good God! But, by the way, yes, you and I were basically on exactly the same tangent there previous to that. Which was that, you know, the Lord General's retinue really allows him to force melee quite nicely. You do have to pay requisition to make it work fully, but Nem and I actually talked a little bit about this in the winner's interview, that he did a really good job of using that to his advantage.
Yeah.
And it's something the K-Knob does a lot too, so I'm like, I can, you know, relate.
Yeah. He has a similar staying power, in my opinion, to the Tech Marine with Artificer armor, although you do have to pay for it.
Yeah.
It does come right out of the game.
And
so you can literally just walk up the squad.
Oh, really nice job there by Nem. This is the kind of micro that distinguishes gods, by the way. There's a Weird Boy shot being fired in progress towards his Guardsman, and he's somehow able to get his Guardsman in the Chimera before the Weird Boy shot hits.
Weird Boy. What are you doing, Weird Boy?
Getting tied up in melee, which is never where he wants to be. But why didn't he just warp bomb it at his feet? That would solve everything, wouldn't it? I'm sorry. Now I'm just getting petty. Although, for the record, I think that is an incredibly stupid topic because warp bombing at your feet is something you never want to do. So I don't see why there's a need to take it out of the game when it's already bad play to begin with. I mean, there's only one situation you want to do, which is when Assault Space Marines and Storm Boys and stuff are jumping on you. And even then...
I understand Vintage's perspective there, though.
A bit, but I don't see a need for it. It's kind of like, alright, let's, you know, Sentinel Stomp is a little powerful then. But here come the Ogrins, and again, we see that Norni actually has his Weird Boy out, but this is a Beamy Luda on that Luda, so... That's going for the Chimera. And that's again, the effectiveness of this composition of having the Chimera and the Ogrins, we've talked about it before with Noabe, and we're going to talk about it here again, is quite simply that the Chimera forces your setups, which are usually your best suppression, right, to go ahead and swap over to AV, and that's not too effective for dealing with Ogrins.
Yep. And I will point out that in my just in my experience, the Lord General is hands down the best hero for supporting Ogrins. Looking at Norni's force composition right now, he's going to have to rely a lot on suppression from the big shooters and knockback from this commando squad and the Weird Boys Warp Vomit to deal with these Ogrins. And with a few choice war gear selections from the Lord General, he can negate some of those options. Like, for example, I think it's called the Carapace armor, the tier 1 armor that prevents suppression on units.
Yeah, well, the nice thing about this for the... I like this move here, by the way, by Norni. This is really good usage of commandos here. But yeah, basically, the nice thing about for the commando knob, anyway, is that he has a lot of options as far as a Weird Boy goes and commandos go, and high explosive shells go, to knock the Ogrins back without having to use suppression to do it. So, anytime you can go ahead and do that, it's kind of like dealing with knobs, it's the same thing. Anytime you can use knockback instead of suppression, it's, oh gosh, these shooters are just getting annihilated by this. Oh, barely getting out.
Jeez.
Well, anyway, so what Norni did over here in the...
so good.
Yeah. On the left side, Norni actually did a little bit of an interesting variation on Love the Daka, which was, he came out, Love the Daka, he had the commando knob put a stun bomb down while the Ogrins were getting Love the Daka. Then he tossed the Burn a Bomb, and he used high explosive shells to make sure they were contained in the Burn a Bomb, and got a little bit of extra damage on top of that with high explosive shells. So just a really nice combo there. And the reason why that works against Ogrins and it doesn't work against your average unit is because your average unit will just retreat out as quickly as they can from the stun bomb port of that, right? Because basically the whole Love the Daka there is to allow you to get the stun bomb in. But, for your average unit, it's like, okay, so as soon as, Love the Daka wears off, just retreat, and that's going to negate the Burn a Bomb portion of it. But that's not the case for Ogrins, because they want to stay on the field as much as they can, because they've got the health for it. So I liked how he did that combo for that unit. But anyway, we're seeing, at this point, though, NMOK just has a much better force composition. And these shooters are just not effective at all against these Ogrins without Norni being able to use his whole force composition against them. And we're seeing that it's very tough to do that with the Chimera and the Sentinel still pushing on the other side. And again, Norni's power economy is still not very good.
What is it?
Sorry. So there isn't too much to comment on right now. We see a Burn a Bomb going in, but again, Nem staying on top of things, getting his squads in the Chimera. By this Chimera with 1 health. This Beamy Luda doing a nice job there. And meanwhile, these Commandos trying to do what they can, but the Sentinel doing a good job of leading them. Commandos not cheap to reinforce. And here we go, the range buff and everything. Although, I guess it does give the Ogrins a little more chasing power there, not doing too much of everything else. Sentinel getting a nice little stomp in here. I think the Beamy Luda should be able to yep, Beamy Luda finishes that off. And there go the Sluggas, though. Are they going to get out? They might, maybe. Looks like they will get out. But here goes Stand Firm.
But yeah, we see that Carapace armor going on as well.
Oh gosh! Oh gosh! Not in the base again! Oh no! Oh wow, that squad survives with just 1 out of 5. Oh, that is getting even more brutal with every cast. And so, meanwhile, as far as
it would be.
Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
That was just me rambling. I was going to say it would be interesting if the game somehow documented how many casualties were caused by that. I'd love to see it, especially in this game.
Yeah, ooh, that is going to be one of the more devastating high explosive shells casts I've seen in this game, by the way. Or just kind of period. I usually don't see it that effective against Guardsmen. Here we go again. Nice usage of the... What, you can do that? What? I didn't know that, actually. Well, you learn something new every day. Did you just see what happened there with the Ogrins?
What specifically?
Getting knocked back by Love the Daka and popping their health kit.
Yes.
While being knocked back,
Yeah,
so...
that was very nice. Usually the abilities don't work, but health kit
Usually.
pops instantaneously no matter what. So.
Yeah, alright, so that is interesting. I'm surprised we're not seeing zaps here by Norni. This is kind of, I'm a little not happy with that. He can't zap at this point, though, because if he does zap, he's going to lose his Weird Boy. The cast time is just too great. Here's another Commando Squad. This is a solid choice here. He's going to be able to combine the two Commando Squads, or should be able to combine the two Commando Squads. Go ahead and have one, you know, Love the Dak and have the other one burn a bomb. That's when your Guardsmen are in serious danger, when you're able to have comboed Commando Squads. But we're seeing here, Norni is strengthening his Tier 2 composition as much as he can. Nem, at the same time, though, as his composition is beginning to be near the edges of faltering, it's bending, but nowhere near breaking yet. And he's doing really great micro here to keep it alive. And by the way, this burn a bomb not going to do anything because there's no Love the Daka to follow it up. He's just not able to go ahead and do that immediately here. Even if he did, though, Nem reacted pretty quickly.
Yeah, and he's got a Chimera right there.
Yeah. But going back to what I was saying earlier, Nem kind of won. We didn't really cover it. I was starting to, and that's why I was going to cut you off earlier, but your thing was more relevant because I can talk about this anytime. Nem went Tier 3 at just about the perfect time. You see, he's built up a lot of resources. He's got a lot of options now. He can continue building towards a Baneblade, which is not fun for Orcs, but he's going to go ahead and grab a Lehman Russ right now. And again, this is one of those things where it's just going to come in and hugely complement his force composition, but it's not going to matter. He's already won.
Yeah. And Nem takes another victory.
Yeah. But I was just, you know, trying to point out there, kind of at the situation where his force composition may begin to break, and that's exactly when his tech kicks in. And it just gives him another big tech advantage, and all of a sudden Norni has to find another way to deal with that, because he still has not dealt with the Chimera, and a Lehman Russ might be hitting the field. Especially with those Ogrins out, it's very tough to rely on that Beamy Luda now to deal with two vehicles with just one AV source. He'd have to get to Tier 3 himself. You know, as a Commando player, I feel like he'd have to get Tier 3 himself and go ahead and get a rocket for a little bit. But he's not really in a position to do that. That is a huge luxury to be able to have the rocket. And when I say huge luxury, I mean, I don't mean like that it's a huge luxury to be granted to the Commando Knob that he just gets it. I mean more like a huge luxury to be able to get Tier 3 and then afford that in Tier 3. Because usually when you get Tier 3, you've got a lot of other purchases to make first.
Yeah, it's definitely expensive.
I mean, I can't say...
I know at least...
Yeah.
Oh, go ahed.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, no, again, I'm just going to clarify, it is about as expensive as the next big AV war gear, like the Power Claw and stuff, although it is a little more specialized in the Power Claw's its only issue. But, you know, because it's Tier 3, it just tends to be one of those things where, you know, particularly Commando Knob, if you're staging a heavy Tier 2, and then you're getting out tech to try and get to Tier 3 to use that to deal with it, is kind of a little bit tougher than it seems a lot of times, so... Anyway, go ahead.
Definitely agreed. Oh, no. You're all set.
Oh, okay. Awesome. So, yeah, that's the last of the replays we have here. I don't know if Nem is still in chat or not, but if he is, if we can get him on Skype, that'd be awesome. But and I saw your Skype drop for a brief second there, but I guess it's having connection problems again.
Yeah. I'm not sure what's going on, considering I have not moved and my internet has remained constant this entire cast, but
it could just be Skype.
Skype has decided that now is the time to act up. So, yeah, that's what I'm thinking it is.
Skype having general issues, yeah. But,
yeah. What can you do? Technical issues on the Dawn of War 2 daily? What?
Yeah, on dailies? What is this? Things that happen.
When does that happen?
Hopefully not as much anymore, but but anyway, so NemOK is showing a couple of different faces here, but just pretty much everything though, without using catechins very much at all. There's one exception in the first game we watched, and he made good use of them. But again, they weren't. It wasn't like one of those things where, you know, again, a lot of Imperial Guard players had at one point felt like catechins, they make or break your force, you know, basically. And certainly we see NemOK presenting a style of play for Lord General. And Lord General, even, by the way, he was considered to have very good synergy with catechins because of health kits. Granted, med packs are just generally good for everything. If you guys take a look at the semifinals games, which we might cast tomorrow, we'll figure that out. But if you get a chance, we actually have the VODs up on here. On this, well, actually, they're split between this channel. Well, actually, the ones for Nem are all on this channel. So if you actually look at the VOD that is up on here, it's like all 5.5 hours or whatever it is of the Sunday coverage of the GameReplays Open Season Tournament, Tournament C. But there are the semifinals and the finals, and you will be able to see that Nem did a great job basically making sure that health kits, med packs were distributed to everything as they were needed. There was just... Guardsmen made great usage of them too, even the autocannon. And actually, I kind of regret that we didn't get to see any autocannons really used in the two games we watched here. So I really think we might watch those semifinals and finals games tomorrow, because his autocannon usage was really great too.
Oh yeah. And showcasing that recent change by Relic is fascinating to me.
That's actually the funny thing, was that I asked him about that in the winner's interview, and he was basically saying that he didn't start using them just to start using them, right? He actually had started using the autocannon well before the change was made. He just generally likes the autocannon because he has Imperial Guard forces on tabletop, and so I think he also has Space Marine and Chaos Space Marine. But anyway, so that's why he had played those two armies previous to Retribution. But Imperial Guard being his main, I assume, for tabletop. But anyway, he just has a lot of autocannons in his fluff force, so he's like, I want to make that happen on in Dawn of War 2. And the same basic thing behind the whole infantry with cavalry approach. Just again, the same idea of like he just wanted to execute what he liked doing. Like, so he's just basically doing what he likes, and it's working.
And making it work.
Exactly, he's finding a way to make it work. Which is one of the great and awesome things about like Warhammer Dawn of War 2, right? Like, because it's 40k, we get so many players. It's a positive and a negative at the same time, because there are some people, I won't name them, but they just have this huge affinity for the lore of the race and whatnot. Yet they kind of, don't. They never have come to grips with the reality of the race in terms of how it's implemented for gameplay. They haven't really kind of taken into context that, like, maybe this race isn't really right for you and the way that you play. You're not going to be able to twist it into the way that you want to make it work. And, they haven't maybe quite come to full grips with that yet. But then there are other players, like Nem, who, like, take the race and they're like, well, Relic implemented it this way, and this way really works for me. I'm finding ways to do what I want to do, and it has absolutely nothing to do with just trying to be awesome. It has everything to do with just trying to be like accurate, or I don't know. I don't quite know how to express that, but you probably know what I mean.
I get what you're talking about. Yeah, you're like just using the pieces of the race as designed within the framework of the game to really use it to the max potential, basically.
Yeah, and and also at the same time satisfy I guess to kind of be
your fluff needs.
Yeah, your fluff needs. And I think, again, NemOK has found a really nice balance with that. And Vindicare X also has done a pretty good job, because I know he likes Space Marines, but he at least has recognized that his playstyle is to be very aggressive, and he really likes using Bloodletters and all that. And it ends up being that Chaos is the better fit for him. So you'll typically see him play Chaos in tournaments and stuff, where it really matters whether he wins or not. But when it doesn't matter whether he wins or not, he'll just often go Space Marine, which is actually his favorite race.
Yeah. Very nice. And there are other... considerations as well for like making things work. Like me personally, I think the autocannon has like the best audio effects, or one of the best audio effects in the game. It just has like this visceral like thud 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 sound that's just awesome. So despite them being absolutely terrible earlier on in Retribution's release, I'd still like getting them from time to time when I knew I had already won. So that can play a role as well.
I didn't think they were that bad, but I know like the Imperial Guard ones weren't supposed to have like any serious differences in terms of performance from the the Khorne Havocs, but at the same time, when I used them, particularly against Tyranids, I had always felt like they were somewhat effective, and I'm not sure exactly why that was. And now it's really tough to go back, and figure that out, because we have the autocannon buff, and now it's like trying to figure out how something was before and why you felt like it was okay before is really tough. But I think it was kind of like Storm Boys against Tyranids, right? It's kind of like they do, because the Tyrant Guard is really the only vehicular threat in Tier 2, and it's not a real vehicle. It kind of was like it worked pretty well, and then it did huge damage to anything blobby. And Tyranids that is Tyranids. So I mean, I think even in its prior form, just the whole idea of the unit worked. And I would really have to see Nem play against Tyranids, but I don't think he did any of that in this tournament. But I'm sure we'd see plenty of autocannons there. Or maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe. We'll have to see.
But yeah,
I'd actually be really interested to see how he approaches the first Tyranid matchup.
Yeah, that was the one thing that he wasn't really challenged with in this. That if I just had I thought he climbed a really tough road to win this tournament. But if there's one thing that I would put on a road to winning a tournament right now in Dawn of War 2, to make it incredibly brutally tough, it would probably be some form of Tyranids, just because I know like Tex lost to Akra, he played Tyranids, and Tex was like, I just haven't played against Tyranids enough recently to actually go ahead and have enough practice to win that. That was his excuse anyway. Probably a very valid excuse nonetheless. But so there's just a few things with Tyranids that pop out. Certain strengths and just a really different style of gameplay, and then also just the fact that if you're just going around on auto match and ladder and stuff, don't run into too many Tyranids very often. I know that was actually something again that claimed my roommate in this tournament, was that I kept telling him he needed to practice more leading up to it, and he didn't. And he ended up facing a Tyranid player, and I told him a couple of days in advance he'd be playing a Tyranid player probably, and he still didn't quite step that up, and just again was not able to really adapt to the situation immediately, right? So
yeah.
But nonetheless, Nem, amazing
for sure.
job to win the tournament, so that's about all I have on that front. I always love it when people are able to do, to bring new things to light and then win while doing it. Win decisive tournaments. Win big tournaments decisively, I guess is what I want to say there. And at the moment, there is nothing bigger than the open season, so.
Yep. And could talk some on that, but my Skype is ready to fail me.
Yeah, bugging out. Well, okay, I'll just do the ending announcements then. And by the way, thank you for coming on and covering for Lockjar while he goes ahead and attempts to not fail in some courses that he's taking. I don't know if this is his math test or not, so that may already be a lost cause if it is, but
yeah.
But if it isn't, then hopefully he'll be able to pass it with flying colors.
Yes, cross your fingers for him.
Yeah, I'm working on it. I think he can do it. I have confidence.
Yeah,
that's the attitude. In Lockjar we trust.
But yes, thank you for having me. It was a spectacular experience, and it was great to look at some of Nem's play. I'll definitely be stealing some of the ideology behind his stuff and putting it into my ladder games when I actually can ladder again after school's over.
So basically what you're saying is that you're going to be advancing the metagame courtesy of Nem.
Isn't that a beautiful concept?
It really is, particularly for Dawn of War 2.
Yeah, like this... That's a whole nother conversation, but at the same time, like the fact that this you're going to see more Imperial Guard players like playing like this now because of what Nem's done.
Yeah.
And because
maybe
it's worked.
we'll see just a little less QQ about how terrible Guardsmen are.
Yes, that needs to happen soon.
Honestly, I don't have an issue with QQ. Frustration is, fine and all. But at the same time, you can't let it blind you. And I feel like a lot of players, when it comes to certain races, and Imperial Guard are really new, and they're probably even more different than Chaos, despite the Chaos was incredibly different when it came out, too. And also, I guess it kind of does go back a little bit to what Relic talked about, when usually they came out with expansions and they purposely made the races overpowered, and I felt like this time they didn't do that with Imperial Guard. There was only maybe one or two possible standouts, Lonely Pyre being one of them when it was first put into the beta, but...
Yeah. They did a really good job with Imperial Guard. Like, I've been with Relic through the good times and the bad times of Company of Heroes, and to see them pull off an expansion where they put in a race that was both balanced, well thought out, and fun to play was just like, wow, they're getting this.
Yeah.
So
I think it is an adjustment for the players, though, to kind of not come in and not have the new race like compensate for their unfamiliarity with it and their unfamiliarity with attacking matchups from different angles and such. So I do think like players need to make a little bit more of an effort when they're playing Imperial Guard to remember, hey, this is a really new race. There's a pretty good chance that it's decently well balanced, and even though a lot of these matchups seem really hard, there are probably intricacies to them that I'm just kind of missing at the moment.
Exactly.
I mean, like, again, we talked a lot about like high explosive shells today at the special shoot, and we're like, well, disregarding all other discussion on the war, the ability and the war gear, the special shooter itself is actually kind of a downgrade against most of your Imperial Guard units, particularly Sentinels and whatnot. You just got to watch out for high explosive shells on a couple of units and your Guardsmen. But when you look at that in a certain way, and you look at the kind of attrition that it puts in on your Guardsmen and the way it does it, it's very similar to the intended usage of special shooter against Chaos. And so when you find like those intricacies, right, like against Chaos, I feel like special shooter is incredibly well balanced actually, because it can wipe heretics, but heretics, the second they get aspiring champion, are completely fine. So they're all of a sudden, it's like, okay, get aspiring champion, we're good. But that's a big cost, right? It's something they don't necessarily have to do till they're forced to do it. But it helps the Orc player who's really kind of behind economically in a lot of areas compared to Chaos and a lot of portions of the early game. It kind of helps them get back into things a little bit. And so, just little things like that, I feel like when you look at them in those lights, that, you can kind of start to find little intricacies and leverage those, and you just gotta be aware that those probably exist, and just because you don't see them immediately doesn't mean they don't exist.
Exactly. Like, I'm a firm believer of an evolving metagame, so I'm very curious to see where things go from here, especially with the IG versus X matchups.
Yeah, those I feel are the most the most volatile right now. Because I think everything we saw from Nem, despite being really awesome, it doesn't seem like one of those strategies that can't be dealt with in some way. It didn't come across as so overwhelming that I would look at that and go, I don't know what I would do about that. We think we found, in all situations today, we found, when we were looking at it, like, we found something for Space Marines that can work, and we found something for Orcs that can work.
Yeah, we found very, very clear and straightforward and logically flowing from, like, it intuitive counters to what Nem was doing. So it's not over the top, it's not overpowered, it's just an evolution in the metagame, which is, as I keep saying, very, very neat.
Exactly. So, again, thanks for hopping on, and thanks for some awesome discussion, some awesome analysis, and just generally being an awesome co-host.
No problem. Anytime. You did a spectacular job as well. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
And thank you for helping and really organize and running the GameReplays open season tournaments, because we wouldn't have these replays without that.
Anytime. As you mentioned yesterday, it's a labor of love, and I love seeing the competition in the community. It's a really great thing.
Yeah.
But yes, I will be signing off now. Thank you so much again.
Alright, no problem. So for everyone else still remaining, just a couple of last announcements here. I mentioned earlier that I talked about the switch to Justin.tv. So we are here now on Justin.tv. So basically the new URL, for those of you watching this maybe on YouTube, on demand or whatever, and by the way, on demand, I'll get to that in a second, but it is www.justin.tv/ICCupTV2. So really pretty basic, stuff there as far as the URL goes. As long as you can find Justin.tv, you can probably find ICCupTV2 pretty easily. But yeah, so again, 5:30 Eastern Standard Time through about 7 p.m. Of course, we're going a little later this time. We decided to do all 4 replays we had available of Nem and take some extra time to discuss that at the end, because we felt like Nem did a really great thing, and not that other players like Edja and Vindicare X haven't also done great things. They've done really awesomely. Winning any open season tournament is just an amazing feat. But Nem doing it with Imperial Guard when they're still so new, and really showing some different stuff, some things that a lot of players have said are just unviable, really, we feel again pushes the metagame forward, was really worth taking a big look at. So huge congratulations to him. Hope he really likes the $25 he got, and we'll certainly be seeing him in the playoffs where he'll have a chance to win a lot more. So speaking of the open season, you're actually going to be able to sign up for the next tournament, Tournament D, on Wednesday. So that's just a couple days from now, guys. Wednesday, go ahead, sign up for the next tournament. You'll be able to find the sign up on GameReplays.org/Dawn of War 2. There'll be a little news post there, or you can hover over the tournament thing up top in the top corner. It's a little drop down thing, and you go ahead and select registration or sign up or whatever it's going to be. And/or if you go to the general discussion forums, there's a tournament sub forum. In the tournament sub forum, there'll be 1D signups, so you can just go sign up there. So there'll also even be a tournament hub for Tournament D. If you go to the tournament hub for Tournament D in that tournament forum, that'll direct you anywhere you need to go. So all of those things are going to be accessible. So many ways to just kind of make sure that you know where to go to get signed up for Tournament 1D. The map pool for that, by the way, is going to be Seawall Frontier, Greentooth Gorge, and Calderis Refinery. So basically like some of 3 of everyone's favorite maps. Remember, map pool just dictates the first map in a best of 3 series or best of 5. So basically, it's not the end all be all, but at the same time, it is going to go ahead and set kind of the tone and the pace of a match. That first game in a series is perhaps the biggest of the entire series, because you're really setting which way the series is going to go, who has the initiative. So those ones seem to be the most even maps and the most liked maps by the community, so they seem to be a good place to start. And then the Tournament Eve, which will actually be the one after that, is going to be using all custom maps. So be on the lookout over the next month for GameReplays to go ahead and kind of release what it's, or kind of give indications of what maps are going to be used for that. From what I'm hearing so far, there's a new map under development by London Duncan called Lost, and he's working on making that really like tournament ready and everything, and just really going all out, making it a great competitive map. So look for that to be released and to be in testing and everything to really get that prepared. That's probably almost like a shoo-in. And then 2 of the others that have been talked about a lot are Craft World and The Toxic Canyon. So those other 2 are already in the map pack that is on mapsofwar.info. You can go ahead and find it, mapsofwar.info. You can go ahead and download the complete Dawn of War 2 map pack. It's just this huge, there's hundreds and hundreds of maps in it, and there's tons of really great maps in there. There's actually this one really great 3v3 map even, but there's tons of really good 1v1s. A lot of these really are really close to being ready for competitive play in our opinion. So there are maybe some bugs and whatever else that need to be fixed, but with those bug fixes and stuff, they can be really valuable competitive maps. So really encourage you guys to download that map pack, check out a lot of those maps, and just kind of get a feel for some of them. But anyway, so other thing with Justin.tv, you may have noticed already, there are actually VODs relating to Dawn of War 2 on ICCupTV2 for Justin.tv right now, which is awesome. There's also a VOD of Day 2 of the tournament, because we actually switched from Ustream to Justin.tv, like from Friday night to Saturday morning. So Friday night was actually on Ustream, and Saturday morning was on Justin.tv. That's literally how rapid the change took place. But anyway, there is a VOD of the entire Day 2 coverage of the Open Season Tournament C on the IC Cup TV 1 channel, because we didn't have the info for IC Cup TV 2 yet. And then Sunday, Day 3 was all on IC Cup TV 2. So you can find the VODs for that, between the two channels. And all the VODs now for the dailies should immediately show up on this channel, IC Cup TV 2, on Justin.tv. They should show up here, like immediately after we finish. We'll also work, though, on continuing to support the YouTube channel with the videos as well. But if you want to catch them a little more immediately, they should be here long before they're on YouTube. So feel free to check out the VODs here, or feel free to check them out on YouTube, wherever you want to, desire to. Yeah, so it is kind of a nice upgrade in that respect. Otherwise, blaqk should be back tomorrow, and again, I really like the idea of taking a look at more NemOK replays. I personally casted the semifinals and the finals, and I really liked a lot of his play there. Again, a lot of autocannon usage, and much better, well, I don't want to say better, he made good usage of the sniper rifle in these games, but not as much usage of it. He made a lot of really good usage of it in the semifinals and finals. Semifinals he played Edja, and the finals he played Lindenen. So, two incredibly good players. Lindenen, by the way, climbed over Vindicare X, and I believe he also climbed over Aki. I'd have to double check on that. But I believe he climbed over Vindicare X and Aki to get to the finals. So, very, very good player who had an incredibly good tournament and incredibly good showing. So, the fact that NemOK 3-0'd him really takes nothing away from Lindenen's just great play and such. Just really spoke to how well NemOK played. But anyway, again, thank you everyone for tuning in. I believe that is my last announcement for the day. And I will see you guys tomorrow at 5:30 Eastern Standard Time. That's PM, not AM. So, good night everyone. See you then.